Hey everyone, I'm so excited to be here this morning to talk about how Xamarin developers can leverage the brand new Mobile Center to really continuously automate, deploy, test, learn, and of course create great backend services for their mobile applications. I'm super excited to be here to really talk about all the great features built into Mobile Center, and I don't want to waste 1 minute. Now, if you don't know who I am, I'm James Montemagno. I'm a principal program manager here at Microsoft. I live in this bright, sunshiny city of Seattle, Washington, where each and every single day I drink all of the amazing coffee that we have, and of course, build great, amazing mobile applications. And over the last 6 years, I've actually built and shipped more than 70 applications with Xamarin across all the different platforms. And one thing that I've learned, or multiple things that I've learned, is that it is quite difficult to not only just build applications, but get them tested correctly, get them in my testers' hands, in my users' hands, and also kind of learn what my users are doing, get crash reports back, all these kind of essential services to really build great quality mobile applications. So that's what we're going to kind of talk about today. Now, we're going to take a look at Mobile Center and how we kind of ease some of those things, and how I've learned over the time that I've spent with Mobile Center and how it actually does that. Now, you can find me in a whole bunch of different places. I actually have a few other places that you can listen to me or see me. First and foremost is my podcast, Merge Conflict, that you can find at Merge Conflict FM. It's a weekly podcast on mobile development and technology in general that I do with my good friend Frank Kruger. And then if you're more visual and you want to see some videos, head over to the Xamarin Show. It's on channel 9 at xamarinshow.com. Each and every single week, we dive into different topics about Xamarin and libraries and apps being built with Xamarin. So check it out over there. And of course, if you want to contact me, just email me directly, motts@microsoft.com. You can read my blog, or of course, follow me on Twitter or on GitHub. My account is at James Montemagno. The easiest thing to do is just Google me, James Montemagno. You'll find me. You'll find my source code. I'm all over the place. So let's get into Mobile Center, what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to talk a little bit about those mobile challenges and some other things that we may not realize that are kind of hindrances that we want to seek to solve, and what Mobile Center can help us with. We're actually going to take a look at some of the features that Mobile Center has to offer, including lifecycle, monitoring, and backend services for our applications. And of course, resources and a little Q&A in case you have any questions along the way. Feel free to ask questions though along the way. And of course, this webinar is being recorded, so you'll get an email afterwards about where you can watch it. So when I think about mobile development, it's not only that, we have to actually figure out how to build applications on these different platforms. It's that as businesses start to grow and start to mobilize, they're really appifying their entire business process. We have developers that I know that are building hundreds of applications for their the companies that they're working for. And not only do these applications have to be mobile, have to be great, have to be native and high performant, they also have to be super high quality. We're shipping these out to either customers and real users in the world, or to users internally in our actually enterprises or businesses. So we want to make sure that they get a great experience and each and every release as we rapidly iterate on our applications is super high quality. And then what we need to do is say, well, we need to find some app lifecycle for that. Like, how are we going to deliver that? Well, we need to design and develop. We're going to need to test. We're going to need to deploy. We're going to need to monitor, and essentially think of how we could bring all of that together into one amazing service. And of course, as we keep building our applications and testing, we have to realize that there's a really rich ecosystem of different devices that are out there. Not only just phones, but you have tablets, you have different form factors, you have TVs, you have watches, you have all these different things out there, and there's thousands upon thousands of different devices out there. Not only for just Android, but for iOS too. When you think of not only the flavors of the different sizes of devices and iPads and iPhones, but also the different versions of iOS that are being released. And now more than ever, both Apple and Google are really revving and releasing new versions of iOS and Android all the time. So these applications not only have to be built and rapidly iterated on, but we also need to ensure that our applications are connected and they have the data available to them all the time. And that as our application and user base grows, we have a backend, a cloud service that is super high performant to get millisecond response, and of course, high scale. So that really is going to enable us to create really unique experiences, but also gain insights about how our users are actually building it. And that's where services inside of Mobile Center and Azure come together. So me, on a normal daily basis, I'm here, maybe on my Surface Book or on a MacBook, for instance, and I'm inside of an IDE, Visual Studio, or Xamarin Studio, building my most amazing application ever, and I'm inside a simulator or device. And that's just me coding away. But all of a sudden, I start needing to do other things. I need to test. I need to distribute. I need to build. I need to worry about crash reporting and storage and push notifications. And soon I'm just banging my head against the wall because I have 10 different services open in 10 different tabs in 10 different websites. And all these different things are scattered all over the place. Even if you just pick Microsoft services, we have a whole bunch of services that solve these problems, and they're all over the place. And it's nice that we have the options to pick and choose the services that we need. But at the same time, it sure would be great if there was a service that brought them all together into one place, that I can just have a mission control for my applications that I'm developing. And that's Visual Studio Mobile Center. Everything that you need for your applications when it comes to these rich lifecycle services available while we're developing and after we've shipped it out into the market. So when we think about our applications, it should be all of our applications. So anything on iOS and Android today can be built inside of Mobile Center, including my traditional Xamarin iOS and Android applications, and also my Xamarin Forms applications. I'm going to take a Xamarin Forms application here today, and we're going to actually put it into Mobile Center, and we're going to automate it. We're going to do all this awesome stuff with it. So no matter how you're building applications, Mobile Center will work for you. Now let's talk about Lifecycle Services. And to me, this is like, hey, I'm writing some code, but then what? And often, when I think about just testing it myself, I hate having to go pull out a device, having to put it in, have a release. I'm like, okay, I have this APK. I signed it. Did I sign it on my machine? Did I sign it over there? Like, where are my keys at? Like, what happens when I want to put it on, my QA's devices? Do they have to bring it over? Do they have to put it in? Like, where's my testing going on? It gets really confusing. What I really want to do is just write some code. As a developer, that's what I want to do. So the very first part of Lifecycle Services is continuous integration, and the ability that every single time I commit code to a server, my application is built, it's signed, it's packaged, and artifacts, aka the releases like an Android package or an iOS package, is dropped. And this drop can be just downloaded, it can be emailed out, or maybe automatically deployed off to my users. And that's what I want to have happen every single time. And then, of course, with that release, I should be able to take it and make sure that I have automated user interface scripts that are being run every single time. This allows me to really ship apps quickly. So every time I'm like, I think this application's ready. I've ran it locally on my own device, but let me make sure that it runs on the top 10, 20, 30, 40 devices, 100 devices that are out there. Because as these applications and devices have grown, the testing has become really complicated. So I can write a series of UI automated scripts, all in C# with some different frameworks that I'll cover here in a second, that can automatically run inside of Mobile Center. Now, our automation lab has over 2,500 unique real devices that are there with over 400 different configurations of OSs and sizes and form factors that are available. And these are real physical devices. They're not jailbroken. They're not emulators. They're real devices. So they're the real devices that your users will have when they get them from the App Store or internally. And you can use multiple frameworks to build these automated test scripts. Things like Xamarin UI Test, which I'll use today, which is C# driven, or Calabash, Appium, or Espresso. These are different frameworks that are available inside of Mobile Center that you can build user interface scripts with. So we built it, we've dropped our artifacts, we've gone ahead and run all of our automated UI tests. And it sure would be nice if automatically I could just give that to all my testers, all my alpha, beta testers, anyone like that. And that's where continuous deployment comes in, the final step of the lifecycle services inside of Mobile Center. The idea of taking that build, giving it to my testers, whether they're internal or external, controlling the distribution groups that are available, and then automatically or manually deploying that out to them. So let's actually just take a look at the application that we're going to use Mobile Center with today, and then put it inside of Mobile Center. So I just built a little Xamarin Forms application. I actually live streamed the creation of this if you go to my YouTube channel. I just have an Android and iOS application, and it's a Xamarin Forms application. So some XAML pages in here. I have some history, home, view model, and I built tic-tac-toe essentially. I built it in maybe like 2 hours total, just nonstop. We went with it. And I wanted to kind of build this to kind of show how we could do some UI tests, but also really leverage the services inside of Mobile Center. Now, this application is for iOS or Android, and I said it's Xamarin Forms, so you can use it with Xamarin Forms applications or traditional iOS or Android. Again, Xamarin applications are native, and they're just a native iOS or Android apps, no matter how you're developing. And I haven't really done anything special here. It's just an app. To start using the Lifecycle Services, there's nothing else that I need to install into my application or anything like that. I can just start pulling it into Mobile Center. So let's take a look at what it looks like here. So I actually have my Android device here. Here's the startup screen. I have a little history page that we can see. Here's a list view on the left-hand side, who won, how many moves there was. I can start up a new game. I can start playing a game. There we go. Let's see. Didn't win. There was I won. There we go. Perfect. There we go. Awesome. I can reset the game. I can come back and go into the game history. And then there on the bottom there, we have how many moves it was, how many, who won and when and how and all those different things, which is really great. So it's a nice little application. And essentially what I want to do is maybe I want to modify the user interface a little bit. Maybe I want to take it, I want to write some code. And it would be great if I could just automatically commit that code and then it starts building. So let's do that. Let's actually take this application, let's put it inside a Mobile Center. So all I got to do is open a browser and go to mobile.azure.com. And at this point, you'll learn a little bit about the different services that are available inside a Mobile Center. And we can either create a new account down here on the bottom right and hit register. So you could sign in with that account, or preferably you can sign in and connect with GitHub or with your Microsoft account. And I've actually done that. I've just connected with my GitHub account because if we actually look on this tab, this application is open source. It's inside of my GitHub. You can actually find this code today. And then over here, all I got to do now is just say connect with GitHub. Since I've already connected and logged in previously, all my applications that I've already put inside a Mobile Center are here. So I have some games and some other applications that I've done some Mobile Center work on. So let's put the Android application in here first. And let's say add new app. And I'll just call this tic-tac-toe.android. I'll say Android TTT. This is an Android application, and I'll just say Xamarin. So essentially, I'm setting up my application that will have the ability to use one or all of the different services that are there. So I'm not setting up anything yet. I'm not doing anything. I'm just kind of creating a blank canvas for me to start automating and doing things with my application. Now, I would do this again for iOS, whether you're using Xamarin Forms or not. It doesn't matter. You'd create one for iOS and one for Android. And that's going to kind of leverage the different services that are available for iOS or Android in the specific setup. So here it'll add the application, and we're brought to this getting started screen. And we can see here there's some getting started for Xamarin or Xamarin Forms, and I'll come to that later. I also want to bring a quick note here for this manage app. And this allows you to rename it. It gives you an app secret, and you can start adding your collaborators. So for instance, I could add my own kind of test email. This is my development email that I use all the time. I'll just hit save in there and hit save changes. And there we go. So now we're good. And you can add as many of your users or collaborators that you want onto your application. So let's start a build actually. When I tap on the build, it'll say, hey, where's your application at? Since I've already linked it to GitHub, it'll go off and find all of the GitHub repos that I have. So all I got to do is say tic-tac-toe, there it is, pulls it automatically. And at this point, it'll start to say, let's configure our build. And we can see here we actually have two branches, feature SDKs and master. And the idea with Mobile Center is that there's going to be a lot of branches most likely inside of your application. So instead of just automatically trying to build everything, what you do is you set up a different build configuration for what you need. So maybe you never need to build a branch, or just need to do something. You don't need to set up one. So the first one here is master. And the idea is that this is going to be my distribution branch. So I can go ahead and tap on it and simply set up the branch for continuous delivery and deployment. Here it'll say, hey, these are the projects that we found, iOS, Android, UI tests. So I'll say Android. There's going to be a release build. And this is nice. This build on push means that every single time I push code to the repo, it'll kick off a new build. I'll also have it sign this build, and we're going to need a key store here. So let me go ahead. It's actually over on my desktop. There's my key store. Drop it in there. There we go. Now I just need to go ahead and put in my passwords. There we go. Got to remember those. Should be correct. There's no, yeah, there we go. So signing credentials. So essentially when you created your key store, just your credentials there. Then I'm going to say distribute these builds. Now I've only created one distribution group, but the idea here is with my master, I'm pretty certain that when I commit code to master from a branch that, hey, you should go ahead and distribute that to all my testers. So let me go ahead and finish that setup there. Now at this point, what Mobile Center will do is it'll figure out all the different changes, everything that I need to do, and now it'll actually queue a build. And what it's doing is leveraging the amazing, awesome services inside of Visual Studio Team Services and scaffolds everything that I need to do to build this application and start building it automatically for me. And we can see within just a few seconds, it started building. Now, it's really important to know that I didn't go and configure machines. I didn't do anything special. I simply pointed it at it. It automatically figured out how to download, make the connection to GitHub, everything like that. And at the same time, it provisioned a full Mac for me automatically. It's just some Mac running somewhere that's going to handle and build my Android or iOS applications. Now, what this is going to do, it's going to start kicking off building this application. And when it's done, we'll actually be able to download it and do whatever we need to do. So now it's going to download my NuGet packages. It's going to restore all the NuGet packages. It's going to start building the application. It's going to sign it. It's going to get everything ready to go. And we can see that's what it's doing now. It's going to do a NuGet restore and start downloading this application. So once we have it, we can start doing some really cool things. We can sit here and we could just watch the log for a few minutes, which isn't too much fun. But we could start using some of the other services that are here. So for instance, well, maybe we want to set up another build for our feature SDK branch here. So I'll say set up branch. And this one, maybe this is a debug build, right? So I don't want to sign it and just say, hey, finish build, and it'll go finish it for me. Now here's what I kind of like about it. Let's go ahead out of here. So if I tap on this master branch here, let's say I want to change some code. Let's say I want this to be font size of 20 or something like that. And I can come into my client and let me just go ahead. I'm on my master branch and say update font size. There we go. Commit that in, push up that code. Now what I want to show you is that we've already queued a few builds. So whenever I set up a new build here, the feature SDK is going to queue to build in this kind of order. So we get kind of one at a time. And what will happen here is we can see automatically we've queued yet another build, update font size. It'll be kicked off for me. So I don't have to do anything, right? I just committed code up into GitHub, into my Git, and it automatically manages that. It has the different build numbers. It'll tell me when it's going to be built. So now what we can do is we can actually start testing and then distributing our application. So let me go ahead and tap on the test section here. And automatically with Mobile Center, you'll get a trial to use the Mobile Center test area. So we can start testing it on all these different devices. So I'm just going to say, hey, let's start testing my app. What's great here is it'll go figure out all the devices that are available to me, and I can come in and actually filter. So let's say I want just phones and I want to test this application on definitely 711. Let's do 600. Let's do 444. So like all these different devices and flavors of operating system that I support, but I might not have devices for. I can also filter on manufacturer. I have memory, I have CPU. So if you run into something tricky with that, all I have to do now is just simply tap on a few devices. So let's go ahead and tap on a few devices here. There we go. And cool. I can say, give me these 10 devices. And at this point, I'll want to run some tests. Now, we can see there's some Appium test, Calabash, Espresso, UI test. And inside of my project, I actually have a series of Xamarin UI tests available to me. So here is just UI tests, the tests that are available, and these can be run on both iOS or Android. So for instance here, we can see before each test I initialize. I have a simple one that says, let me just launch right here. Let me enter names. So essentially entering different names. Are the buttons enabled or disabled? Then I actually have one to play a full game right in line. So I can tap, I can play, I can do all this different stuff and see who wins and make sure that it's all working correctly. So I can take these UI tests and essentially ship that up to Mobile Center. So I make sure that, hey, it's UI test. I'll hit next. And at this point, there's a little bit of manual work to be done to actually start testing this application. The nice thing about Mobile Center is that there's a CLI, there's a command line interface, a CLI, command line interface, that'll enable you to actually do almost everything inside of it that you could possibly think of. So for instance, we can just run the tests here automatically. In the future, you can automatically do this. That'll be the idea. So here I can just go ahead and grab this, and I'm going to put it in here. I have one for iOS already created. So here, for instance, I could start saying, oh, where's the path to my UI test? There it is. And the path to the APK, we'll just say, is going to be com.refractor.tic-tac-toe. We'll just put it in a default directory, for instance. So these are the different commands I can run and then ship it up. And that's nice. So I'm all done. And I'm like, all right, good. Now at this point, Mobile Center will just wait for me to actually get those test results back. So here, for instance, I should, at some point, if I go into, there we go, master, we can see that it's built. So this is really nice. I can have this build, and it only took 3 minutes to do the full build, and I can just simply download the build. There we go. So I can do this manually. I'm just going to put it on my desktop. There we go. So let's go ahead and go ahead and extract this really quick. There we go. There's my build, and there's my APK. So now what I can do is I'm just going to go ahead and put this right in line in my GitHub. And now I can go ahead and run this command that I just got from Mobile Center. Oops, there it is. Here's a quick trick for you. So if you go in here and you can see that I have an IPA file, I have an APK file. If I just come in here in Windows 10 and type CMD, that will open a command line exactly where I need it to be. Now at this point, I can simply go off and run that actual command and just hit enter. That'll validate and prepare my tests for me automatically. It'll make sure that the settings that I entered, which first and foremost was the name, the APK of where it existed, and then the actual UI tests that are there. So that'll go off. And now at this point, we should be able to go back to test, and it should be waiting for our test to be uploaded. So we'll see if it actually uploaded. There we go. Now it's uploading, it's preparing our test, preparing our application, and actually uploading it to Mobile Center. So essentially you can think of this as you can run these tests locally on your device, and then when you're ready to actually test it against several devices, this build, I'm like, I'm almost ready to get it tested, or I'm in a feature branch and I'm ready to go. You can simply download it automatically or take the APK that was generated on your actual device there. So here, for instance, let's go ahead and see if it should be up here. There we go. And there's our actually tests getting ready to run and everything like that I was expect. So it's going to start running these tests, and I can come in, and of course the test report will be getting ready to go when it's done. So we'll come back to that later and see if it finishes off. And then we have the ability to distribute. So here, for instance, I have my collaborators, I have a distribution group, and I've already received an email for this application. I can come in and I can start managing my collaborators. I can create new distribution groups, and I have the releases that are here. So here are my groups, and let me create like a new group, and I'll say all testers. I say beta alpha testers. There we go. And maybe I'll add my, there we go, one right there. I'll say create group. And now at this point, I could go ahead and say, oh, I would like to, I don't have any testers in here. Even though I added someone, it's because I just haven't invited it, and they haven't accepted the invite yet. So let's go ahead and make sure that they're in there. There we go. Yeah. So we've sent off, and there's one tester. There we go. I have to enter. So now I've gone off and I've created these releases. I could create a manual release. So I could say, let me distribute a new release here and drag and drop the APK file. Or for instance, it will automatically send a release. So here's my alpha testers, but here's my collaborators. So here it's already sent off this release into my Gmail, so I could actually see the release details if there were any, and I could see if anyone downloaded or installed them. Now, these are all brand new releases, so we're not gonna, it's a brand new test, so it's still validating tests, it's running these tests, and it's still running new builds from these different branches that are going on. So here's the new one that was just being built. What I wanna show though is essentially the same application that I had already set up for iOS. So this application for iOS is under tic-tac-toe iOS, and I have the same builds here. We can actually see that the other one for iOS was being built up, but for Android was already being built up because I had just set it up. But we can actually see that when I committed that code, it was not only building my Android app, but it was also building my iOS application right here, which is really cool. For the iOS application, it's very similar to set up those releases. So you just say the solution, if you want to build, if it's for a device or not, and if you want to sign it and who you want to distribute it to. So here I upload my provisioning profile, I update my P12 cert here and apply those changes. So really kind of cool. So automatically, just like on Android, I had those tests. I ran that same exact test script over on these tests so we can kind of see them in action here. Some are already running. So for instance, we can see there's 3 tests. There's peak memory usage over time. I can come in, I can tap on one of these specifically, and then go in a little bit further into the details. So here, for instance, is the enter name. So I get device screenshots that are going on here. I can tap on one, get details, get log information that's going on. And as I scroll down, I can zoom in or zoom out. So we can zoom in on these a little bit more. Enter the player name. So we're getting real screenshots along the way. Here, for instance, is that same play game, but I'm going to go in and see this application being run on the actual iOS devices. And I have 10 here, or 10 different devices that are going on. So when I tap on one to get more details along the way, we can see who won and make sure that our application is not only performing correctly, but also looks really good on all the different devices. Maybe I want to clean that up a little bit on the iPad. I can filter it down into form factors, just like when I was selecting them. So built, test, and then distribute. So here are the different developer groups and then collaborators. So I mentioned that the Android ones, they've gotten an email. I could go into my Gmail, I could get that. We could also do the same thing here for iOS. So let me show you what that looks like. I'm actually going to hop over onto my machine over here, where I actually have my iPhone plugged in and doing a screen mirror. Notice I don't have any application plugged in at all. Already. But when I come over here, I can actually pull down. There's a few things that I want to show. First and foremost, if I tap on one of the emails, I'll get an email notification from Mobile Center that, hey, I had some tests failed or I had some that were successful. Here, for instance, I get some invitations, but here I can see that I have a new release that I can simply install. So I'll hit install and that will bring me over to my browser of my choice and it'll log me in. If I'm not logged in, it'll just simply ask me to log in to my account. Else I've already logged in here with my GitHub account, so I'm kind of good to go. I can hit install, and just like that, it will go ahead and say, hey, do you want to install this application? And it'll download immediately onto my device. This is all happening in real time. So this is really nice to show that, hey, I just pushed some code, I'm building up my UI tests, and then boom, immediately I'm coming in and distributing this application. When I open it up, here we go, we get tic-tac-toe. I can come in and start playing. So here I can just enter all the names, hit start game, boom, 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 boom. And if I won, awesome. Now it's going to save my game and set it all up. So just like that, being able in just a few minutes to take an application, set it up, do my UI tests, and then distribute it automatically. So I wanted to kind of show you the iOS look and feel here, which is really cool. All right. So we think about those are the Lifecycle Services, and we can see we're waiting for some devices here. We'll close out of that. It'll continue to run even if I close out of that, by the way. That's kind of important to know. So we're kind of halfway there at this point. We've taken our applications, we've integrated all these lifecycle events, and now whenever I push code, I don't have to worry about anything. I'm ready to have them in my testers' hands, have the UI tests ready to go automatically, just run a simple line of code and done. But of course, now the applications are out there in the wild. We've distributed them, but how can we actually gain insight and make sure that our applications aren't crashing? Or if they are, make sure that, hey, I have a really good crash report that's coming in. And that's where the monitoring services inside of Mobile Center come in. There's two major parts. First and foremost is analytics. And analytics gives us not only great, amazing active usage of our users, but session data, device statistics that are out there to kind of gain insight on how our users are using our application. But we can also track events. So anything that users are doing inside of our application, we can take a look at. So if they're pressing buttons, are they buying something? Are they playing a certain type of game? Are they not doing something active? Did we integrate a new feature and maybe they can't find it? We can track that information and add additional metadata. So how long did it take? How often did they press on something? How many moves did they take, of this game, for instance? And of course, we can actually see real-time log flow information. So we can see our analytics live. So analytics are great. So we can learn from our users. But we also want to make sure that we get great crash reporting. And the Mobile Center crash reporting with a single line of code to initialize the Mobile Center SDK gives us automatic native and managed crash reports for any of our iOS or Android applications. So here, for instance, we can actually see how crash-free our applications are, how many crashes per day there were. And then, for instance, down the bottom, we can say, hey, these are actual crashes that are occurring, and I can open them, I can close them, I can resolve them automatically. And what's really great about this is that there's a full cross-platform mobile SDK for Xamarin developers. And this is a screenshot actually from NuGet here of the Mobile Center SDKs to not only do analytics, but also crash reporting. And actually what I want to do is just go ahead and show you continuous monitoring of this application and what I did to get it set up. So I'm back over here and on the Get Started page of our iOS and Android application. Let me go ahead and zoom in so it makes it a little bit easier to see. As we can see, there's Xamarin and Xamarin Forms. And this is, hey, if you want to add the Mobile Center SDK, all you got to do is go ahead and find the Mobile Center Analytics and Mobile Center Crash Reporting. This is Xamarin Forms application. So it says, hey, go into your app.xaml CS or app.cs, add a few using statements, add a little start here, and then go ahead and configure your application with your key. And that's it. Now, at this point, it will start gathering all the crashes and give you some analytic data. So for instance, if I come back over into the Android version over here, we can actually set that up. So let's do that. All I really need now is Xamarin Forms, and I have this configure one. So here I come into my application. Let's go ahead and close out everything so it looks clean. There we go. I'm going to say manage NuGet packages. And we can look at our installed packages. And I have a bunch of plugins. And here is the mobile Microsoft.azure.mobile analytics. There's the crashes, and I have a bunch of other SDKs and plugins installed automatically there. You can continuously receive updates just via NuGet. And here you can see I've installed it in my Android or iOS project. And if you had a portable class library, you would install it there. So first and foremost, what I do is I come into my app.xaml. And we can see that I have a few using statements that I just took from the browser. And then I have this simple mobilecenter.start. And you can see I'm saying, hey, use type of analytics and use type of crashes. You don't have to use both. You can use one or the other one. So if you already have analytics or you already have crash reporting in your application, you don't have to do both of them, or you can just do one or the other or both. I like both because it kind of gives me everything in one place. And that's it for the actual mobile center. Setup at that point. All I have to do now is come into my main activity, and inside of here, before I load my application, simply paste in a little bit of code to say mobilecenter.configure. And let's make sure that I grab the other piece of code, which is probably going to be use these three using statements. Perfect. It says here, open the main activity in the onCreate right before load application. Go ahead and add it. So there we go. I'm going to go ahead and add these lines of code. I have the actual ID of the application, and hey, at this point, I can actually commit some code. I'll say, hey, I'm going to need to add Android Mobile Center SDK. And now our next build will actually have the SDK automatically in it. Really cool. Awesome. Now, with just that setup, so there's the Android one. If I come into iOS, we can actually see the same line of code here with a different, unique ID. You can use the same if you wanted to. I like to separate them out into the two applications just to really keep it clean. But we can see that with just those few lines of code, I'll automatically get crash reporting and analytic data from my application. There's nothing else left to do. But if I actually come into Mobile Center and hit this docs and APIs, this will actually bring me into the Mobile Center documentation. And down under SDKs, there's Android Xamarin, and we can learn a little bit more about analytics and crash reporting that's here. So if I come into actual crashes, we can see, hey, I can generate a crash report. I have more information. Did my app crash in the last session? I can enable, I can disable, I can do some interesting things here with the crashes. What I really like is the analytics part. So you can add in this simple cross-platform API to simply track events. So you give it a unique identifier and then a dictionary of key value pairs of additional information that you want to track. Then you can enable them, disable them, and do a bunch of things. So for instance, when I come into my game view model, or on every page, I should say, the first thing in the code behind of every page, I have a navigation event. So track event, navigation here, and I have history. When I go into my game page, I have navigation, but I give it the game page so I can track that information. In the game view model, I do additional tracking. So I have a bunch of getters and setters, but inside of my shared code, I say, hey, the game is over. So let me track that. Was it finished or did they reset the game? When they come down, every single time my users play a move in the game, I actually track that. So I can actually say, hey, what is the most common first move, or what's resulting in these interesting steps? And I can track additional information that will help me make my application better along the way. So how long is it taking for people to do? Now, I'm not tracking any user identifiable information or anything like that. So it's all very anonymous information that's coming in, and all usage is automatically anonymized and things like that. So there's nothing, personal that's being collected there. Now, on the crash reporting side, if my application crashes at all, it'll automatically send those crashes off to Mobile Center for me. Nothing else left to do, which is really, really nice. So that's all I have to do. It's like, good, I'm good to go at that point. You also have the ability in the API to pop up a dialog box and manually say that the user should always send or not send or things like that based on approval. I always just send all my crashes just so I know. And that's it. So just a few lines of code in this cross-platform API to track events. So now when I come into my Mobile Center, we can actually tap on crashes. And first thing, my application hasn't crashed at all, or else my crashes would show up there. Or I can tap on analytics specifically, and we can see over time the amount of usage that my application is getting. This application is not getting tons of usage because I just started building it, but we can take a look at the session data. We can see the top devices that are being used for this application, the country information, languages that are there. When I tap on events, we can see all the different events that are being tracked. So for instance, when I go into navigation, we can see usage over time of counts, usage, if it was on the game page, the history page, when I hit game finish, how often that was, X or O's, who won more often, how many moves did it take, for instance, and when they reset the game, was it actually finished or was it not finished at that point? And then under log flow, we can actually see logs coming in real time. So as this comes in, we get additional information of the games being played off and on. And each of these are kind of unique identifiers, which can kind of help you diagnose if something really goes wrong or when sessions start up or go down, for instance, inside the game. So we have our analytics, we have our crash reporting, and I'll show you specifically what it looks like in a little bit more of an advanced application. So now in our build, we can actually come in, and now that we have the SDK installed, we can actually do something here. Let's see if this works. Let's go ahead and come into the Android SDK. There we go. Let me go ahead and download this, download build. Let's go ahead and put this on our desktop. There we go. There we go. There we go. Now this build should have everything I need in it. There we go. Go ahead and drag and drop. Let's go ahead and make sure that the application isn't installed. So even for me as a developer, it's nice because I can just go ahead and drag and drop this onto my device. There we go. Now I can open up the tic-tac-toe. And at this point here, I can come in. I can maybe view my history of the game. We're going loading some history, and we'll see here in a second where all of this data is coming from, which is really interesting because that was a clean install. So I could enter some name stuff here. There we go, start playing around. Now at this point, the data should start flowing into this Android application. So it'll start collecting data and coming into my log flow. And again, it's going to take a little bit of time for it to start collecting the data of the application as it starts coming in. So it usually takes a few minutes to kick in, just like kind of the other events. But it's really that simple to just kind of start getting that information into your application. And there you go. Actually, just like that, it's automatically picked up our log flow. So we can see actually coming in. As I start tapping around, we get all the different games that are coming in. It's a little indicator showing it's actually listening. It's waiting for events to come in and as the game is being played. So I've actually come up here and start playing the game. Oh, I won. That's good. We can save the game here. We can hit reset. And you can see it's almost real time coming in. And as we're hitting the events and going in, we can see the actual game being played and as we're tapping around, yes or no, or what it was finished, and make sure that our events are being tracked correctly. Now I can come into my events, and the events, they'll start coming in, same thing with audience, just a little bit of time to start taking those events and putting them in automatically into the application. This one's not too impressive, so I can kind of show you a finished version here. So for instance, down here, I can take a look at one of my other games that I have, this Scorekeeper application for iOS that's on the App Store today. So when I go into analytics, I can see all the monthly usage, daily usage, weekly usage of this application, the session duration, how often are people using this application, where are they using this application. As I go through the events, I can say, hey, what kind of games are people playing? Here, the counts. You get all this rich data that's coming into the application, which is really cool. So the final part, though, is now that we have our application not only being built and being finalized and being sent up, is that we want to actually create a rich cloud backend for our applications. That's where the power of Azure comes in, enabling us to easily integrate essential mobile services to not only build rich backend to do online-offline data synchronization, but connect on-prem or to my cloud automatically, such as Azure. To do things like have table storage or blob storage for my application, to do dynamic schemas and user-specific data and soft deletes, for instance. And of course, do user authentication. So if multiple users are playing this tic-tac-toe game, you should get your information, not everybody's information, for instance. And the backend services built into Mobile Center enable you to do just that. You can use Active Directory, a custom OAuth, Google, Facebook, Twitter, it's up to you. So let me show you what this looks like. Now, inside of this application, if I go back to my Android application, we can notice that there's tables and identity. Here, if you want to set up a backend for this application, you can simply connect to your Azure subscription. So when I log in here, it'll actually automatically take me into Azure. It'll authenticate, do all the different OAuth that I need it to do. And then it will actually bring me back to, hey, select a subscription. I'll select my Visual Studio Ultimate account. There we go. It'll connect to my subscription, and essentially it'll start enabling me to build a backend and provision everything that I need right inside of Mobile Center. I don't need to jump around to create any of my backend services. They're all right here. And then I can tie in different services. So that's how easy it is to connect. Now, I've already set this up actually for iOS. And what I do is I like to share the same backend between my iOS and my Android application. So for here, what I'm doing is I'm using this backend services to synchronize all the games for all my users. Just because I'm in development right now, before I add kind of per user account. So here I can simply tap on game. And here we can actually see the mobile service table that's coming in of all my table storage. So I actually have all the players, the winners that are inside of here. I can actually edit the schema if I wanted to add new columns, new rows, delete things automatically there. I can come in and I can clear the table. I can upload CSV. I can change permissions, who can do things, if there's per user data that's on top of here. And I could add additional tables inside. And then when I want to, I simply come in and I could add additional authentication endpoints. Now this table here gives me a unique URL up inside of Azure to integrate into my application. Now, since I'm using the same backend for my iOS and Android, I can simply use this one here. And to start building a backend for your application, there's a separate SDK to install. So this way you're not having everything all at once, right? Everything is simply a pick and choose what you want to use. If you want to use analytics, crash reporting, or the backend services. So what we're using here is the Azure Mobile Apps SDK. So the backend services. So I have the mobile SDK, the SQLite store to do online-offline data synchronization, and everything falls under Microsoft Azure Mobile. So all the SDKs align there. So inside of my shared code, I'm going to use the same backend service. So I have an Azure service here. You can see the same URL. I have a mobile service client. I have a table. I have the same URL. If you're already using, mobile service client, or if you've used it before, it's the same exact code. You create a client, you create a synchronization store, and then define some tables. So at this point, I can simply synchronize some table storage and push and pull some data. I only do that in non-release mode, so I have some conditions here. If I want to add the game, I simply insert the game right into the line of code. So it'll insert, save locally, and then when I'm online, it'll synchronize that with my backend code. And literally in less than 100 lines of code, I have a full online-offline data synchronization between all of my different applications. So now when I come in to my iOS application, I have all my backend services that are going on. So all that data shows up there. When I come into Android, same exact thing. I can come back into my game history and boom, there's all that information that's coming and doing an online-offline data synchronization automatically. So there's nothing that I have to really worry about. Everything is there for me. So covering it again, inside of Mobile Center, every single time I commit code, my application is built, signed, packaged, and ready to go to not only test my application on thousands of physical devices, everything to make sure that my application is doing what my users are actually doing, and then of course distribute them. So not only me as a developer can install and get things ready to go, but of course release it out into the wild. Then we have advanced crash reporting and analytics for our application, and of course powerful backend services, kind of every single thing that your mobile application needs in one place inside of Mobile Center. So truly, Mobile Center is your mission control for all of your mobile applications, all of your lifecycle services, all your monitoring services, and all your backend services that you can pick and choose what you need, all or one or two or three, or all like I did inside of this application. It's up to you. You can get started today by going to aka.ms/mobile center to learn more and to register. We have great resources on the developer documentation that I showed you. And also, this is part of the Mobile Center webinar series. So there's a series of other webinars going on that can focus on, are going to deep dive into specific topics inside of Mobile Center. So what I did today is give you a complete overview, taking an application, automating, and doing everything that you need to do for Xamarin applications. And with that, I want to thank everyone that joined the webinar today. I want to open it up for questions and answers, and I hope that you reach out to me if you do have any questions after this webinar by emailing me or hopping on my Twitter or GitHub at James Montemagno. And I do hope that you listen to me each and every week on Merge Conflict. But with that, I will open it up for a little bit of Q&A.